Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. He attacks a royal guard, but nothing prepared him for what happened next. The sky was overcast, a fine grey mist hovering over the city, giving Buckingham Palace a mysterious and almost solemn air. The icy wind blew gently, stirring the royal flags flapping atop the towers, reminding everyone of the power and history that lay behind these centuries-old walls. In front of the palace, on the vast cobbled esplanade, a dense crowd had gathered, as it did every day. Families, tourists from all over the world, history buffs, and simply the curious. All held up their cell phones, ready to capture the iconic image of the famous royal guards. These men in scarlet uniforms, with their shiny black metal helmets and impassive expressions, had become more than a symbol, a must-see tourist attraction. Conversations murmured, children busied themselves, and cameras clicked, but amid the relative calm, one character stood out. Brandon Cooper. A 32-year-old American with an angular face, a carefully trimmed beard, and sparkling eyes that showed a slightly overweening ambition. Brandon wasn't just any tourist. He was a digital influencer, famous for his sensational videos, his extreme pranks, and his calculated provocations. With more than 3 million followers on his social media, he lived for attention, for buzz, even if it meant crossing all boundaries. That morning, he stood a few meters from the guard, his phone mounted on a stabilizer, the camera trained on him. His voice was confident, full of defiance. "Watch me, guys, today I'm going to make this living robot move. No one has ever challenged me like this," he said live on air, a smirk on his lips. His voice carried beyond the crowd, attracting a few curious glances. Some smiled, amused by this new attempt to disrupt order. Others frowned, already aware that this wouldn't end well. Opposite, motionless as a rock, stood William Carter, barely 25 years old, but with an impressive presence. The son of a British Special Forces veteran, William had grown up in military discipline, where rigor and respect for the rules were etched in the blood. From a young age, he had trained to serve the crown, to become that living symbol of authority and tradition. He knew his role perfectly, to remain stoic, impassive, never yielding to provocation, because every reaction could be interpreted, publicized, judged. In his dark eyes, he had seen dozens of tourists trying all sorts of tricks to make him laugh or react. Some danced, others tried to talk to him, still others pretended to be asleep, without ever succeeding in destabilizing him. But today, something was different. Brandon wasn't content with mere provocations. He was trying to cross that invisible line William had learned to protect. He moved a little closer, his gestures becoming increasingly bold. "Come on, move a little, old soldier. I know you're not a robot," Brandon shouted to the snickering crowd. It was no longer a game, but a challenge to tradition, to authority. William felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. He knew that giving in to anger would be a mistake. Yet, Brandon's disrespect resonated like a blow to everything he stood for. And that's when everything changed. After several minutes of provocations that inflamed the small crowd, Brandon redoubled his audacity. He circled William like a bird of prey, jumping, shouting, miming absurd dances with exaggerated gestures, trying to break the guard's rigor and calm. "Come on, have a laugh. You're just a guy in disguise, a soulless puppet," Brandon yelled, his voice vibrating in the cold air, mingling with the muffled laughter of the tourists. The crowd, initially amused, was growing increasingly silent. A sense of unease was subtly creeping into the air. It felt as if the game was about to turn. Then, suddenly, Brandon took a step too far. In an impulsive movement, he reached out and tried to grab the royal guard's shoulder, trying to destabilize him, to break his immutable posture. "He's just a guy in disguise, right?" he said, his face close to William's, a mocking smile on his lips. The shock was instantaneous. William didn't move immediately, but his gaze darkened. He took a precise, measured step back, his left foot striking the ground with a sharp thud that echoed throughout the courtyard. His voice then rang out, firm, clear, powerful, like a guillotine. Back off immediately. Final warning. The crowd's murmur died down. A deathly silence fell. It was felt that this was no longer an amusing spectacle, but a situation that could get out of hand. But Brandon, intoxicated by the adrenaline rush and galvanized by the flood of likes pouring into his live video, refused to back down. His determination turned into pure defiance. Without thinking, he placed his hand on William's shoulder strap, trying to snatch the fake weapon, a regulation rifle made of painted wood, a more than real symbol of authority. This was his fatal mistake. In one fluid, swift, almost instinctive movement, William grabbed Brandon's wrist, twisted it with perfect mastery of his training, and with a controlled push, slammed him to the ground. The cold stone of the courtyard against Brandon's cheek contrasted with the heat of his growing anger. Without missing a beat, William pulled out a restraining strap, cleverly hidden in a fold of his uniform. He buckled the strap around Brandon's wrists, who was still struggling, but he was completely restrained. At the same moment, a second guard appeared, emerging almost from the shadows on the right flank of the palace, his quick steps pounding the ground like a war drum. In less than 30 seconds, the matter was over. Brandon lay face down on the cold tiles, gasping for breath, his hands tied, while the guards held him down firmly. Around them, the crowd held its breath, frozen, aware that they had witnessed a scene that would go far beyond the simple jokes of an influencer. Around them, the crowd, initially shocked, now froze into complete immobility. The peals of laughter, the mocking comments, the joyful cheers that had filled the square just moments before had completely disappeared, replaced by an icy, heavy, almost unreal silence. The phones continued to film, capturing every detail of the arrest, but no one dared to move, speak, or even breathe too loudly. Every witness's gaze was fixed on the scene, oscillating between fascination and fear. The air seemed charged with a dull, palpable tension, as if the very atmosphere around the palace were holding its breath. Then, in the distance, the distinct sound of an engine rose, breaking the tense silence. A black car, with tinted windows, glided quickly along the cobblestone road leading to the palace. Its imposing presence was immediately noticed by all. In an instant, two men in dark suits stepped out of the vehicle, their determined footsteps echoing off the ancient stones. Their piercing gazes, behind dark glasses, betrayed their identities, agents of the MI5, the famous British intelligence agency. Without wasting a second, they approached the group, displaying a silent but undeniable authority. They took charge of William Carter, the Royal Guard, and Brandon Cooper, the now subdued offender. The two agents surrounded William and Brandon, and began escorting them into the palace, their figures disappearing behind the large, ornate doors of the royal courtyard. Meanwhile, a uniformed officer of the Metropolitan Police stepped forward to face the crowd, whose murmurs and whispers were becoming more and more insistent. In a calm but firm voice, he spoke to clarify the seriousness of the situation. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you have just witnessed is a serious violation of a classified security protocol. This is a protected area, and any endangerment is strictly prohibited." He paused briefly, looking the crowd in the eye, so that his message would be understood. "The man will be questioned as part of a thorough investigation. We ask you to remain calm and respect the ongoing procedures." The words echoed in the morning chill, transforming the scene from a mere incident of derision into a serious event with potentially far-reaching implications. The looks exchanged among the spectators now testified to the collective awareness. They had just witnessed a moment when entertainment had collided head-on with the rigor of the law and national security. Inside the palace, the atmosphere was heavy, almost stifling. Brandon Cooper was now sitting on a solid wooden chair, his wrists cuffed behind his back, his gaze oscillating between defiance and nervousness. The cold marble floor and the echoing footsteps in the wide hallway seemed to amplify the gravity of the situation. He tried to lighten the mood by giving a forced smile and saying, in a tone that was meant to be light, "That was a fucking joke. I just wanted to make him move." But the silence that followed was heavy, crushing. In front of him stood Sir Jonathan Reeves, a man in his 50s, with an impeccable appearance and a piercing gaze. A senior official in royal security, Sir Jonathan was known for his uncompromising rigor and his keen sense of responsibility. He wasn't smiling. His voice, low and calm, sounded like a sentence. "Mr. Cooper, you don't seem to grasp the seriousness of your actions." He paused briefly, letting his words sink into Brandon's mind. "The guard you attacked isn't just an actor playing a role to entertain tourists. He's a highly trained military officer, specializing in close protection, responsible for the security of one of the most sensitive and symbolic sites in the United Kingdom." Brandon's eyes widened slightly, a cold sweat breaking out on his forehead. Sir Jonathan continued in a more severe tone. "In other circumstances, your actions could have been interpreted as an attempted attack, and you could have been shot without warning." Brandon blanched, reality beginning to catch up with him. What he didn't know was that a few meters away, in a strictly guarded wing of the palace, a group of foreign students, including several children of international diplomats, were taking a guided tour under heavy security. Surveillance cameras, plainclothes officers and sophisticated security systems immediately detected the incident, prompting a maximum security alert. His gesture, seemingly trivial in his eyes, had triggered a chain of emergency interventions, mobilizing specialized teams ready to react to the slightest threat. Sir Jonathan stared at Brandon intently. "You have played with national security like a child plays with a match near a powder keg. This is not a matter of joke or entertainment. This is a matter of life and death." The weight of these words weighed heavily in the silent room. Brandon, for the first time, realized the magnitude of his actions. The excitement of social media, the screams of the spectators, the tumult of the moment faded before the implacable coldness of reality. From dawn, newsstands were stormed by crowds eager for news, while television screens broadcast images of the arrest on a continuous loop. Everywhere, headlines from major English and international media outlets were displayed in capital letters, causing a veritable media earthquake. "Influencer arrested after attack on Royal Guard," headlined The Guardian, accompanying the article with a striking photo of Brandon pinned to the ground, handcuffed. On the BBC, presenters commented on the affair with gravity, emphasizing the scale of the consequences. "An American triggers a Level 2 alert at Buckingham Palace," insisted the Telegraph, recalling that this incident had mobilized several MI5 intervention units. Social media was ablaze, heated debates, mass condemnations, calls for respect for national symbols, but also broader reflections on the role of influencers and the limits of entertainment. Another notable headline was circulating widely. "When buzz becomes a diplomatic crime," stressing that this act had almost provoked a diplomatic crisis between the United Kingdom and the United States. Brandon's image-conscious sponsors quickly distanced themselves from him. One after another, they publicly announced that they were severing all partnerships with him. His YouTube channel was temporarily suspended, while social media platforms removed the video of the incident, labeling it dangerous content. His followers, who had once encouraged him, turned against him, denouncing his disrespect and irresponsibility. The harsh comments poured in, and Brandon's reputation was irreparably tarnished. The British government, through the Home Office, officially announced that it was banned from entering the UK for 20 years, an exemplary sanction intended to deter any repeat offence. For his part, William Carter, who had acted with composure and professionalism, received official recognition. A few days after the incident, a handwritten letter arrived at his home, bearing the elegant signature of the Princess Eleanor, the Queen's youngest daughter, discreetly present that day in a wing of the palace. In this letter, the princess praised William's exemplary discipline, calm and responsiveness in the face of a delicate situation. A private ceremony was held a few weeks later, where William was decorated for his outstanding service, surrounded by senior dignitaries and loved ones. Months later, when the media uproar had died down, Brandon made a public appearance, this time without artifice or mask. He posted a video of apology, his eyes red, his voice broken with emotion. "I mistook silence for weakness. I thought I could play with a country's symbol, without understanding its meaning. I was wrong. That guard taught me something I will never forget: respect." The video was viewed by millions. While many remained critical, others saw it as a genuine sincerity, marking a possible evolution. This story illustrates the power of symbols, the gravity of responsibilities, and the limits of spectacle in the digital age.